You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your PMP certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Closing a project or phase is often underestimated, yet it is one of the most important responsibilities of a project manager. It marks the formal end of a cycle of work, ensures obligations are satisfied, and transitions ownership to the right parties. Closure is not about rushing out the door. It is about calm, structured completion. When done well, closure creates confidence, preserves lessons, and prevents lingering disputes. When skipped or handled poorly, organizations face confusion, missed payments, or operational disruptions. PMI emphasizes that closure is a structured process with checklists, approvals, and communications, not an informal wrap-up. On the exam, stems that describe deliverables left hanging or stakeholders unclear about acceptance test this discipline. The purpose of project or phase closure is twofold. First, to confirm that the work of the phase or project has been completed to agreed standards. And second, to transition ownership of deliverables, resources, and documentation in a way that enables the organization to move forward. Closure ensures the project does not remain in a half-open state with unresolved items. It also brings financial and contractual certainty, freeing budgets and closing legal obligations. PMI's stance is that closure is part of delivery, not an afterthought. On the exam, correct answers stress completing closure steps rather than moving on quickly. The project manager's role in closure is that of facilitator and steward. You do not declare closure unilaterally. You guide the organization through acceptance, handover, administrative steps, and communication. This involves coordinating with sponsors, stakeholders, vendors, and team members to ensure all closure criteria are met. It also involves updating and archiving artifacts, securing approvals, and documenting lessons learned. Closure is about creating finality and clarity. On the exam, distractors often suggest closure is simply shutting down work. The correct answer emphasizes structured acceptance, administrative completion, and communication. Acceptance and handover criteria define when deliverables are considered complete. These criteria should be documented early in the project through acceptance criteria, definitions of done, or contract clauses, but closure is where they are tested. The project manager ensures that every deliverable has evidence of completion, often in the form of test results, demonstrations, or sign-off documents. Handover then moves responsibility from the project team to operations, clients, or sponsors. Without clear criteria, disputes emerge. On the exam, stems that describe stakeholder disagrees on whether deliverable is done point to missing or vague acceptance criteria. Correct answers emphasize criteria and documented evidence. Handover is not just about deliverables, it also includes knowledge, access, and responsibilities. The receiving party must have the training, documentation, and permissions needed to sustain what the project delivered. A proper handover checklist might include system credentials, user manuals, escalation paths, vendor contacts, and warranty details. The project manager verifies handover completeness before declaring closure. On the exam, correct answers usually highlight using a handover checklist and confirming readiness, not simply transferring documents. PMI emphasizes that closure requires validating the recipient can operate, not just transferring materials. Administrative closure is the formal process of finalizing project or phase records. This includes updating logs, confirming all deliverables are closed, ensuring lessons learned are documented, and archiving artifacts in the designated repository. Administrative closure also involves confirming that objectives were met, performance was measured, and variances were recorded. This documentation is critical for audits and organizational learning. PMI distinguishes administrative close from contract close. Administrative refers to project artifacts, while contract refers to vendor agreements. On the exam, stems that conflate the two are traps. The correct answer distinguishes administrative closure as project documentation and archival. Administrative closure often requires formal sign-off from the sponsor or governance body. This sign-off confirms that the project or phase achieved its objectives and no further work remains. The project manager prepares closure reports summarizing scope, schedule, cost, quality, and lessons. These reports are submitted to stakeholders and archived for reference. This step ensures accountability and provides closure evidence for audits. On the exam, stems about auditors cannot verify completion highlight failures in administrative closure. Correct answers emphasize preparing closure reports and securing formal sign-off. Procurement and financial closure are equally important. Contract closeout ensures that all vendor obligations are fulfilled, payments are processed, claims are resolved, and warranties or support agreements are documented. This step protects the organization from future disputes. Financial closure involves reconciling accounts, releasing unspent funds, and updating budgets. PMI distinguishes contract close as its own process, requiring reconciliation of invoices, deliverables, and claims. The project manager works closely with procurement and finance teams to confirm closure. On the exam, stems that describe vendor payment disputed or contract obligations left unresolved test this process. Correct answers emphasize contract close before declaring closure. Procurement closure may include final performance reviews of vendors, documenting whether they met obligations, and capturing lessons for future sourcing. Claims or disputes must be addressed formally, not left open. Final payments are made only after deliverables are accepted and obligations confirmed. Once closure is achieved, liens are released and documentation archived. This protects both buyer and seller legally. PMI emphasizes that contract close is as important as technical completion. On the exam, distractors that suggest paying vendors without confirming obligations are incorrect. Correct answers emphasize validation before release of funds. Financial closure extends beyond vendors. The project manager also ensures internal budgets are reconciled, unused funds are released, and final reports are shared with finance. This step allows the organization to close accounts formally and redeploy resources. Without financial closure, budgets remain distorted, and future planning suffers. PMI emphasizes that financial closure is part of stewardship, ensuring resources are used responsibly and transparently. On the exam, clues about funds still tied up after project completion highlight financial closure failure. Correct answers emphasize reconciling accounts and releasing funds through formal financial processes. People are central to closure. Team members must be released formally, with clear communications about end dates and transitions. Recognition and celebration of achievements reinforce morale and signal completion. Closure is also a time to gather feedback from the team, capturing what worked and what could be improved. This feedback feeds into lessons learned and organizational maturity. On the exam, distractors that suggest simply disbanding the team are incorrect. Correct answers emphasize recognition, lessons capture, and formal release of resources. PMI highlights people as integral to closure, not just deliverables. Communications during closure must be calm, clear, and conclusive. Stakeholders should be informed that the project or phase has formally ended, what deliverables were accepted, and what transitions occurred. Closure communications may include final reports, announcements, or presentations. These communications prevent confusion and ensure all parties share a common understanding of status. PMI emphasizes that closure is not real until it is communicated. On the exam, clues about stakeholders unsure if project ended point to communication failures. Correct answers emphasize issuing closure communications alongside administrative and contract steps. Closure also affects stakeholders beyond the core team. Sponsors, clients, and operational staff must understand what has been delivered, what remains their responsibility, and where they can find support. Communicating escalation paths, warranty obligations, and knowledge repositories is part of closure. Failure to communicate clearly leads to frustration and erosion of trust. PMI emphasizes that closure is about maintaining relationships as much as about delivering outputs. On the exam, correct answers emphasize clear closure communication tailored to stakeholder needs, not silence or vague announcements. Finally, closure is about providing a sense of completion. People need to know the work is done, obligations are satisfied, and the organization is ready to move forward. Rituals such as final meetings, thank you notes, or celebration events reinforce this sense. Closure prevents projects from lingering in a gray area where work continues informally and accountability is blurred. PMI emphasizes closure as a boundary that protects both the project and the organization. On the exam, distractors that suggest leaving the project open in case of more work are traps. The correct answer is always to close formally and follow governance for new work. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Transition to operations is one of the most visible aspects of closure. Deliverables do not stop existing once the project ends. They must be sustained by operational teams or external clients. The project manager ensures this handoff is smooth by confirming readiness, validating training, and transferring access and permissions. Transition packages often include technical manuals, user guides, escalation procedures, and warranty details. PMI emphasizes that closure is incomplete until operations can fully own and sustain the product or service. On the exam, stems that describe operations unprepared to take ownership test whether the project manager validated readiness, not just transferred materials. The correct answer usually stresses structured transition with confirmed operational capacity. A strong transition plan also addresses people, processes, and tools. People need training and support channels. Processes must be documented and aligned with organizational workflows. Tools must be integrated into the production environment and accessible with proper permissions. The project manager's responsibility is to orchestrate these dimensions, verifying that no gaps remain. Transition is a bridge. Without it, operations inherit responsibility without clarity. On the exam, clues about confusion after handover highlight failure to plan these dimensions. Correct answers emphasize comprehensive transition planning, including validation of training, process alignment, and tool readiness. Operational teams must also be engaged early in the project, not just at closure. Involving them during design and testing builds familiarity and reduces resistance. Closure then becomes reinforcement rather than introduction. PMI highlights that operations and support staff are stakeholders, not afterthoughts. On the exam, distractors that suggest engage operations only at handover are incorrect. Correct answers emphasize involving operational stakeholders throughout, ensuring that closure is simply the final step in a longer engagement process. Smooth transitions depend on early and consistent involvement of those who will sustain deliverables. Beyond handover, closure must also ensure benefits enablement. Deliverables are not ends in themselves. They exist to deliver business value. Benefits enablement refers to confirming that mechanisms are in place to realize the benefits promised in the business case. This may involve transferring metrics, dashboards, or responsibility for tracking outcomes to sponsors or benefits owners. The project manager does not stay to measure benefits indefinitely, but ensures that benefits realization is institutionalized. On the exam, stems about project completed but benefits unclear test whether benefits tracking was enabled. Correct answers emphasize benefits handoff, not indefinite project extension. Benefits enablement may include setting up key performance indicators, KPIs, training sponsors in their tracking, or ensuring reporting systems are operational. The handover of benefits is about accountability. Someone must own measurement beyond the project. Without this, organizations may claim successful project, but never confirm whether value was achieved. PMI stresses that project success is judged by benefits as well as outputs. On the exam, Distractors that focus only on deliverables are incomplete. Correct answers emphasize enabling benefits realization by transferring ownership of metrics and confirming processes exist to measure them. Compliance and retention also shape closure. Projects generate large amounts of documentation, much of which must be retained for legal, regulatory, or contractual purposes. The project manager ensures retention schedules are applied. Financial records may need to be preserved for years, while technical records may have shorter or longer requirements depending on industry. Compliance also involves confirming that audits can verify completion, that approvals are traceable, and that sensitive data is archived or destroyed according to policy. On the exam, clues like auditors could not find closure evidence highlight gaps. Correct answers emphasize retention, compliance, and audit readiness. Retention requirements extend to vendor and procurement documents. Contracts, invoices, and performance records must be archived according to organizational and legal requirements. Some industries, such as pharmaceuticals or aerospace, demand evidence preservation for decades. Others may require retention of safety or quality documents for regulatory review. The project manager coordinates with legal and compliance teams to ensure these obligations are met. On the exam, distractors often suggest, delete once project is closed. Correct answers emphasize retaining records in compliance with organizational or regulatory requirements. Closure includes preservation, not just completion. Let's consider a scenario. A project has delivered its product, but during audit, it is found that final acceptance was never formally documented. Options include assuming acceptance because deliverables were delivered, backdating sign-offs to satisfy auditors, performing formal acceptance with stakeholders now, or escalating without action. The best course is to obtain formal acceptance immediately, document it transparently, and archive evidence. PMI emphasizes transparency and audit readiness. On the exam, stems like this test whether you recognize the importance of documented acceptance. Correct answers emphasize closing the loop with evidence, not assumptions or backdating. Another scenario, a vendor contract is technically complete, but unresolved disputes remain. Options include paying the vendor in full to maintain goodwill, withholding payment indefinitely, escalating immediately without analysis, or working through the formal contract close process with dispute resolution. The correct action is to follow the contract close process, address disputes formally, resolve claims, and only then make final payments. PMI stresses contract close is not optional. On the exam, distractors often suggest paying or ignoring disputes for speed. Correct answers emphasize structured dispute resolution within procurement governance. Exam pitfalls around closure are consistent. One is failing to distinguish administrative closure from contract closure. Administrative closure refers to archiving project artifacts and documenting lessons, while contract closure refers specifically to vendor obligations. Another pitfall is skipping benefits enablement, treating closure as deliverable only. A third is neglecting retention, leaving organizations exposed to audit failures. A fourth is failing to release resources formally, leaving team members in limbo. On the exam, distractors often describe shortcuts. Correct answers emphasize structured closure, acceptance, administrative and contract close, benefits enablement, retention, and communication. Another common trap is closing informally without communication. Teams may stop working, but stakeholders remain unclear about whether closure occurred. PMI emphasizes closure must be communicated calmly and conclusively. Closure reports, announcements, and meetings reinforce shared understanding. On the exam, stems about stakeholders uncertain whether project ended highlight this failure. Correct answers emphasize issuing closure communications alongside formal steps. Without communication, closure is incomplete. Failure to validate operational readiness is another pitfall. Projects may declare closure once deliverables are accepted, but operations may lack training or access. This creates hidden risk. PMI emphasizes readiness validation as integral to closure. On the exam, clues like, quote, operation struggling post-handover point to this error. The correct answer emphasizes validating readiness with rehearsals, checklists, and training, not assuming documents alone suffice. A quick playbook for closure provides clarity. Step 1. Confirm acceptance and handover against documented criteria. Step 2. Complete administrative closure, including archiving and lessons learned. Step 3. Finalize contract and financial closure with vendors and finance. Step 4. Transition to operations, validating readiness. Step 5. Enable benefits realization by transferring metrics and accountability. Step 6. Confirm compliance and retention obligations are satisfied. Step 7. Release resources formally and communicate closure calmly to all stakeholders. On the exam, correct answers echo this sequence, never skipping steps. Closure is not an afterthought but a discipline. It protects value, preserves compliance, and provides confidence to stakeholders. PMI stresses that closure is calm, structured, and deliberate. Acceptance is documented, records are archived, contracts are settled, and operations are ready. Benefits are enabled, and communication provides conclusive finality. On the exam, pitfalls include informal closure, missing documentation, or unresolved vendor obligations. Correct answers highlight structured administrative and contract close, validated transition, and documented evidence. By mastering closure, project managers demonstrate stewardship not just of delivery, but of the full project lifecycle. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.